Alright, good morning everybody. It's your boy Akeem and welcome to today's blog. Here to give you some fantasy tips for week 6 of the 2015 fantasy football season. Now this is going to be a tough week for you guys because there's a lot of confusion on what you should start, who you should start and who you should bench. But it's a little bit of a scare this week because we pretty much not sure who will actually have a big week this week. Now we don't really know what's going to happen each week, but this week is in particular is a little bit of a scare because there's too many teams that are playing in tough opponents and tough contests that we don't really know how they're going to fare in their fantasy play this week. But I'm here to give you these tips for this week. Now for quarterbacks, definitely go ahead and start Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and there was one question regarding Carson Palmer against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers is playing at home, and they do have a pretty good defense who did have an interception last week against Phillip Rivers and San Diego Chargers at San Diego. So that's a little bit of a scare, but Carson Palmer's having a great year. And remember in his last matchup against the Detroit Lions, he pretty much only played one half, and he did pass for over 150 yards and 3 scores. Now, a couple players that are in question: Andrew Luck against the New England Patriots. Andrew Luck should be coming back this week with from shoulder injury, and then actually the Colts, they actually had a good replacement in Matt Hasselbeck, who had a good performance against the Houston Texans at Houston. Next up, big question mark for Peyton Manning of the Denver Broncos. Age has finally followed up on him, and he's not been playing well for the past couple of weeks. This week he's playing against the Cleveland Browns, who actually have been allowing the 5th most points to quarterbacks in fantasy play. I think you should give Peyton Manning one last shot. If he does not have a good performance in this week, at least 25 points, pretty much you're going to probably bench him for the remainder of the year. So it's still of a scare for Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas, but go right ahead and start both of those players as well. Andy Dalton of the Cincinnati Bengals, he's having a tremendous season. He's having a great year thus far, and he's playing at Buffalo. Now for the Buffalo Bills, they're going to have to start with a new quarterback in E.J. Manuel to replace Tyrod Taylor with an injury, and there's a little bit concerned at running back with LeSean McCoy. He is returning from a hamstring injury, and Carlos Williams is out with a concussion. Now I think this is going to be still a good game for Andy Dalton, and A.J. Green should finally get back in the touchdown knot. He was actually scoreless in the past couple of games. I think he's going to bounce back this week at Buffalo. AJ Green, and I think you should go right ahead and start Andy Dalton. A couple of players who I think you should definitely not start: Ryan Tannehill of the Miami Dolphins. That's a little bit of a scare. He needs to start showing us a little progress as the year progresses. Same with Joe Flacco against my San Francisco 49ers. Despite the fact that my Niners have been giving up a lot of yards through the air, I don't think that Joe Flacco is going to have a good game because Steve Smith is still out with a back injury. Couple sleepers this week: Jay Cutler against the Detroit Lions. I think Cutler can have a good game despite the fact he's possibly going to have to play without Alshon Jeffrey. And Sam Bradford of the Philadelphia Eagles facing against the New York Giants. Now New York is going to have to play without defensive back Prince Amukamara, who is going to be out for a couple of weeks with an injury. So they're down 1 DB, and that's going to be a concern. I think that Sam Bradford can have a good game against the Giants. Next up, talking about the running backs, I mentioned LeSean McCoy of the Buffalo Bills. He's going to be coming back from a hamstring injury. Now I'm a little bit scared with this one. This is where he's going to be playing against a tough Cincinnati defense. Now Cincinnati did give up a lot of yards, getting rolled over by Thomas Ross last week at Cincy. But this week though, because of the quarterback situation with replacement of E.J. Manuel for Tyrod Taylor, I'm a little bit concerned about LeSean McCoy, but I think you must start him this week and take the chance. Next up, a couple of players I need to talk about is Chris Ivory of the New York Jets playing against the Washington Redskins. Now, the Redskins actually have allowed the 3rd fewest points against running backs in fantasy play this season. I think you should go right ahead and still start Chris Ivory. He did just coming off of a great performance at London a couple of weeks ago against the Miami Dolphins. Arian Foster of the Houston Texans, I think he's going to have a great game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville has been getting up a lot of yards on the ground, 174 yards yards last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Marshawn Lynch will be back this week for the Seattle Seahawks as they place against the Carolina Panthers, in which the Panthers have actually allowed the third most fantasy points to running backs in play this season so far. Now, there is a couple questions and marks regarding Dion Lewis. He had to deal with a minor abdominal injury, but he will play this week against the Indianapolis Colts. And this is a little bit of a big news for you guys. Let's not forget, Indianapolis have been playing terrible against the run against the New England Patriots. So I think you should go right ahead and start both Dion Lewis and LeGarrette Blount. LeGarrette Blount's going to be used more in the ground attack, while Dion Lewis is a better weapon offensively in the pass attack. So you go right ahead and start both of those players. Headed over to the wide receiver position, Antonio Brown, I feel so bad for him and for you fans out there, because Michael Vick's at quarterback. Antonio Brown's not going to give you the impressive numbers that Ben Roethlisberger been helping him get when he's at quarterback. Now this week, Pittsburgh is going to be playing against the Cardinals of Arizona. I think that you should not start Antonio Brown this week because Michael Vick is still at quarterback. But a player that you should definitely start is A.J. Green of the Cincinnati Bengals against the Buffalo Bills. I think he's going to have a good game, like I mentioned earlier. Anquan Boldin of my Niners against the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Baltimore Ravens have the weak secondary, and we definitely have been seen exposed last week against the Cleveland Browns when they were at home, in which Josh McCown passed for 451 yards. Whopping numbers in that matchup. Jeremy Maclin versus the Minnesota Vikings. This is a little bit of a scare for me. Now, Jamal Charles is going to be out for a year, and that means that they're going to have to focus more on passing the football for the Chiefs offense. I think that Jeremy Maclin is a player that you should possibly just bench this week, only because he's going to be playing against a tough Minnesota defense. A player that you should probably use to replace Maclin, though, is Kamar Aiken out of the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I did say that Joe Flacco should be benched this week, but I think you should go right ahead and use Kamar Aiken as a sleeper this week to replace some of your other players if you have concerns. I think Kamar Aiken could give you some safe, valuable points. Headed over to the tight end position, obviously you should start Greg Olsen against the Seattle Seahawks for the Carolina Panthers, and as well as Tyler Eifert. He had a great week last week against the Seahawks. I think Eifert is a great target for the Andy Dalton of the Cincinnati Bengals. And there's question marks regarding Travis Kelce. Same situation that he is in with Jeremy Maclin, but because he's the tight end, I think that you should go right ahead and start Travis Kelce, because they're going to be the Chiefs' offense is going to be focused more on passing the football because Jamal Charles is out. So I think they're going to be focused on more passing the football, and because at the tight end position, it's kind of like you're expecting less points than the wide receivers. I think you should bench Maclin this week, but I think you should go right ahead and start Travis Kelce because he is a big target for Alex Smith. A replacement for Jordan Reed for the Washington Redskins is Derek Carrier against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that Carrier could be a sleeper this week at the tight end position. And there's a couple questions regarding Cleveland's Gary Barnidge. He's having an impressive season, a great year. It's a good sleeper year, probably the biggest sleeper in fantasy play. Now, Gary Barnidge is a great player, but he is going to be playing against a tough and the best defense in the National Football League in the Denver Broncos. But I think you should go right ahead and start Barnidge because he does lead the team in receptions, and Josh McCown definitely loves him at to throw to as a good target. Lastly, the defenses you should definitely start the Arizona Cardinals against the Pittsburgh Steelers, as I mentioned earlier. Washington is going to be playing against the New York Jets. Go right ahead and start the Jets defense. Cincinnati Bengals, because they're the defense is playing with E.J. Manuel for the Buffalo Bills at quarterback. I think that Cincy could be profit this week in fantasy play. Lastly, a good sleeper this week is the Minnesota Vikings against the Kansas City Chiefs. A little bit of a concern because without Jamal Charles, he's just a huge offensive weapon. The Chiefs is pretty much not so much flashy without Jamal Charles. So I'm a little bit concerned. I think that Minnesota could definitely capitalize with the loss of Jamal Charles for the Kansas City offense. I think that Minnesota can have a good week in fantasy play. Now, the next time to catch you guys will be next Thursday, where I will start things off with week 7 of the 2015 season and Thursday night's matchup. Thank you for watching today's blog. I'm your man, LeSean McCoy. Be easy.